Now let's talk about probably the issue that has gotten the most amount of conversation across our county, and that is that of the asylum seekers, the migrants that are in New York and elsewhere in the United States of America. Let me first give you the update of where we are in Westchester County. In Westchester County, there are 3 sites where asylum seekers have been placed by the city of New York. There is one in the city of Yonkers, Ramada Inn on Tuckahoe Road. There's a site in Ardsley at Ardsley Acres Motel, and there's a site in White Plains at the Central Avenue Courtyard Motel. In totality, there are 400 migrants who are here housed in Westchester County. The Yonkers site has been up for 3 months. The Ardsley and the White Plains sites have been up for 2 months. In round numbers, the majority of the migrants, a slight majority of the migrants are adults, somewhere in the range of about 275 or so. About 125 are children under the age of 18. Now, we've worked directly with the 2 groups that manage these sites, WestHab and Yonkers, .go in Ardsley and White Plains, to determine that these children are not of school age. We are checking out various stories that we've heard that some of them are of school age and would have to be educated here in our system. We've been very clear to the city of New York that it is unwise to have school-age children here in the suburbs. We have different school districts. They have different capacities. They're funded in a different fashion than the New York City system is. And the New York City school system is under the control of the mayor of New York City. That is not the case here in Westchester County. As a county executive, I have no control over the school system. So we have encouraged any of these placements to be of children that are not of school age. That is our effort to try to ensure that. And we're checking now to make sure that that is the case. We were told that was the case previously. We want to make sure that continues to be the case. These 3 locations, again, Yonkers has been up for 3 months. Ardsley and White Plains have been up for 2 months. 2 most important factors. These are the areas where the county government has direct responsibility. Number 1, public safety. There have been no incidents of crime at any of these locations, no reports of crime, no reports that have come into local police departments. The Yonkers PD, the White Plains PD, and the Ardsley PDs are the direct respondents. The Westchester County Department of Public Safety serves as backup assistance that has not been called on and needed. All of the circumstances have been handled appropriately, and there have been no incidents of crime in Westchester County from any of these sites where there are asylum seekers. The second area where the county has responsibility, in this case a little more direct responsibility, is in public health. And we can state declaratively that there have been no issues of outbreaks of communicable diseases that have come from these 3 locations and the people that have come in from those locations. They have, each individual has been evaluated to determine what their level of vaccination has been, what their level of exposure to a communicable disease has been. And each of them have been, we have been ensured that there is no evidence of something that could happen in the future. Now, I know how things work out on the street. People conjecture. They give what if this and what if that, and I heard this, or I saw this on the internet. But I'm telling you declaratively, no outbreak of disease, no public crime incidents in these 2 locations. And those are the 2 major issues that have happened. The third issue that comes up in conversation is that of cost. How much is this costing Westchester County? At present, the room costs and the food costs provided to these individuals are provided by the city of New York. The city of New York contracted with these 3 hospitality, motel, hotel facilities to take on these individuals in their locations. They did not come through the county government for approval. They did not come through the city or the village or the town government for approvals. It was a contractual relationship between the city of New York and each of these hotels, motels. And those are legal transactions. And in each of those different cases, it is the city of New York that is paying for the room and board. Any other ancillary costs for public health and for public safety are absorbed in our normal budgeting. And so far, there's been nothing that has required us to overspend our budget. So therefore, there's no additional costs that have come because of the presence of these individuals within the county. Now, it's important for me not only to assert that to this date, there have been none of these incidents, but to tie it into the overall discussion and argument about migrants or immigration in the United States. Let me start out by saying I understand that there's a number of people, a significant number of people, that do not want immigrants in this country. I understand that. I read, like you read, the national political argument, and there is a school of thought, and it has its presence at the national politics and in the political dialogue of the country that we want no immigrants here at all. That argument is not an argument at town hall, village hall, or in the county office building. We don't control the federal immigration policy. And I'll give you one example of why that's the case. With migrants placed here in Westchester County by the City of New York, contractually arranged by the City of New York, I've asked the federal government to establish an immigration court in White Plains at our U.S. District Courthouse so that those claims of asylum seekers could be adjudicated promptly right in our own backyard. And then those claims could be resolved. Either grant the asylum or don't grant the asylum and complete their time in this temporary setting where they're staying in these hotels. The federal government has not chosen to agree yet to do that. I hope they will. But the bottom line is we can't impose that. The county, the town, the village has no power to create the adjudication courts. And because of that, we sit in a situation where we are now taking this humanitarian crisis that exists south of the border, and we are trying to manage that portion of it that is in front of us now. And that is what our challenge is. It is a managerial challenge, not a philosophical challenge. We don't have the ability to tell the federal government what they should do with the immigration issues. You as a citizen have every right to have your opinions, and you express those opinions on Election Day, and you express those opinions on Election Day with those at the federal government level who have the ability to change the public policy. But from our standpoint, this is the process. It's very simple. Those individuals who cross the border into the United States, whether it's in Canada or Mexico or in any other fashion that they come into the county, that they come into the country, they go to the immigration officials and they ask for asylum consideration. They want asylum in the United States for certain sets of reasons. When they file with the immigration system tracks their case and establishes a point at which they'll be adjudicated in a court of law. They are in the country awaiting the adjudication of their case. They're here legally. They're not illegals. You can call them illegals, but you're wrong to call them illegals. The person who's illegal doesn't go to the immigration office. They sneak into the country and then they disappear into the subsystem. And there are certainly any number of people who've reached here without any documentation, and they live wherever they may live. They're not tracked in any group fashion, nor are they funded by the City of New York or any other entity for their life's work here. It's important to understand the asylum seekers, the migrants, the people you see about on TV that are coming into the Port Authority every day. They're coming into the Port Authority because it is the decision of the government of Texas, the governor of Texas, and to some extent the governor of Florida, who have determined that the accumulation of these people waiting in their states should be shared. But they have not shared it nationwide with all 48 other states. They've sent them specifically to New York, to California, and to Massachusetts. I think you understand why that is. There's a political statement being made. They've sent them to 3 states, not on the border of the southern border, and they put them there for a purpose. And now by sending them into New York City, the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, has a right to shelter provision on the table. It is not a function of the law of the City of New York that established it. It was a court case almost 50 years ago that established that there was a right to shelter for those people in the community that were otherwise normally homeless. But that right to shelter has now been applied to those who are coming in seeking asylum who also don't have a place to shelter. So now New York City has had to, by law, provide responsible sheltering for these people. This is not an option that the mayor of New York has, nor an option of the city council. This is a requirement by a court case stipulation law. With that in mind, over the course of roughly a year leading up to the springtime, New York City absorbed increasing numbers of those individuals coming over the border, going into Texas, sending them specifically to the Port Authority of New York. And in dealing with that particular explosion, they reached a point at which they could not continue to house anymore, and now they've tried to house them outside of New York City in other places here in the state of New York. Now, let me be clear. Some of my colleagues, other county executives, issued executive orders, and many of you applauded those executive orders. Stay out of my county. We're not going to let you in. All of those executive orders were ruled by a federal court to be unconstitutional. So while the rhetoric was very strong, we're going to protect our county, they've had no effect. In Orange County and Dutchess County, places where the leaders have come out with executive orders, they have had migrant placements anyway. So we took what I considered to be the managerial approach. And I must tell you, before I was in public office, I spent 20 years in corporate America. I worked for subsidiaries of Nestle and ITT, and I understood what it was when I had a problem. I didn't like it. I had to resolve it. and I had to use my best skill set to try to address the issue at hand. That is what we're doing today. We're trying to manage that which has been laid at our doorstep, which is not of our asking for, nor of our ability to reject, but to try to do it in a humane and humanitarian way, but protecting safety, public safety, the disease element of public safety, and the crime element of public safety. And that is exactly what we have done in this government. Now, I get letters all the time. What are you doing, and how are you going to do this? This is what I'm explaining to you. This is exactly what we're doing. Since placements will come in the county, without our ability to control those placements, we will try to manage those placements, and we'll try to manage them in an intelligent way so they do not affect the people around us. And I must tell you, I travel the county every day. I have people who object to the presence of immigrants in the society, object to the presence of immigrants here, and they object on a philosophical basis. But not one of them can tell me, oh, this person in Ardsley did this, or this person in Yonkers did that, or this person in White Plains did this. It's a philosophical objection. It's a political objection. It's an ideological objection. And in a free country, people are right to have their points of view. You can express your point of view. I might add, there's an alternate philosophy as well. I've had people come up to me and say, how can I help these people? What can I donate to help these people have a life? I've gone over to meet some of these individuals with translation help. I talk to them about their experiences. And you would not trade your life experience for theirs. You know, they were born on this side of a dotted line. We were born on another side of a dotted line. As I've said before, and others have said this before, I look at my own families from Europe, Irish side of the family, Italian side of the family. They were not welcome to the United States when they came. They were allowed to come into the country because the country wanted their raw labor in those days. My great-grandfather from Italy was a qualified stone worker, and they wanted his skills to help on the different projects. I can't say they worked on the Kensico Dam, but he worked on other stone projects in this area, and he could have a life, and he could grow a family. He had 13 children coming from Italy, and one of those children was my grandfather, who became a police officer, and another sibling of my grandfather was a firefighter, and they had worked inappropriately. My grandfather fought in World War I before he went on to his work in the police force, long before he passed away. So the immigrant story is one we've talked about. I understand that the people who don't want immigrants in the country don't see the connection or don't choose to see the connection. They just reject it. They say, oh, it was different. It was different then. Well, you can think it was different, but the bottom line is the hatred that was expressed to the Irish and the Italians, those folks who were Jewish who came at the turn of the century, those who came from China and Asia, the hatred expressed to them is the same kind of hatred that's expressed today by people who are here and don't want other people to come in that they think will ruin their lives. How could they ruin your life? They could ruin your life by costing you money. They aren't in Westchester as of today. They could ruin your life by spreading disease. They're not doing that in Westchester today. They could ruin your life by committing crimes. They're not doing that in Westchester today. That's what we're trying to resolve for you. We're trying to make sure that while the federal government needs to resolve this issue in a significant way, that we in the meantime are managing the process as best as we can and trying to be rational in doing that. We have also been very clear to the city of New York. Not only do we think that it would be unwise for them to send us children of a certain age, we've also said to them, we have a limited capacity of how many people we can handle. We are not structured the way the city of New York is, that our taxation structure is not the same. New York City can tax income. New York City has an unbelievably large commercial real estate base for commercial property taxes. We do not have an equivalent of that in Westchester, even though we're a wealthy county. Our resources will only go so far. Our resources are not sufficient to provide room and board for individuals who are here. That is why New York City is paying for that while they're here. And that's important for you to understand. Now, you understand it, choose not to understand it, you understand it, you agree. That's your philosophy, but I'm telling you facts. We are chasing rumors down it every day. I had a rumor a couple of weeks ago there were migrants being placed in a certain location. Not true. Doesn't matter. They think so. 4, 5, 6, 7 people tell me, oh, I know. My friend, you don't know. You heard it on the internet, or somebody told you, do you know what they're doing? You checked it out. They're not in the location that you said they were. Because there's anger, and there's frustration, and there's fear. And there's also political ideology behind it. It's a point of view that you're trying to drive across to make people have a sense of fear. We're trying to address the reality of things. And if we address the reality, then you can decide what political direction you want to have for immigration at the national level. but not based on lies, not based on fear, based on reality, based on what's actually happening on the ground, which is exactly what we're trying to deal with in these 3 locations. Let me remind you again, I have to remind you every time I talk about this because people have forgotten this fact. In 2018, Westchester County housed 1,000, more than double the number today, 1,000 migrant children in this county. They were placed here by the Trump administration. They were placed here in 4 separate locations, one in Yonkers, one in Ardsley, one in Dobbs Ferry, and one in Somers. Those children were placed here at the time when the federal policy at the border was to take children away from their parents. Parents stayed at the border. The children were housed elsewhere in the country. However many went otherwhere, I can't tell you. 1,000 of them were in Westchester County in 2018. We managed that portion of it. There was no crime, no disease spread. In approximately a year or so, those children were relocated by the federal government. We had no ability to interact with them. They were completely under the charge of the federal government. I heard not one complaint from the people that are complaining to me today. I think I know why. But the bottom line is we had 1,000 children here for a year. Right now, we have 400 that are here for 2 to 3 months. So in matters of proportion, we are not yet at the point at which we were at 5 years ago when we managed the situation effectively. That is your migrant update today. Circumstances could change by midnight tonight or before midnight tonight. They might change in the next week. They could change in the next 2 weeks. We'll try to give you a basic update as we go along. But the core facts as to why migrants are here represent federal policy that has to be addressed at the federal level. And we have been pretty clear, I think, in our public statements about what we want the federal government to do so that it doesn't fall on the backs of the village of Ardsley and the city of White Plains, the city of Yonkers, and on the county of Westchester.